Hello and welcome to episode 17 of Karlene's Anime Corner, a St. Johns County Public Library anime podcast. I am very excited to be here today because we are actually talking about one of my favorite monsters, Godzilla, in his newest reincarnation. And I also have a returning guest. You guys might be familiar with Mr. Keith. He was on for Lupin the Third, and we had a great time talking about this mind-bending anime. On top of that, I have gotten a new internet service, so I am finally able to stream my anime again, and I am behind by about an entire season on everything. So, working on getting caught up on that, and I just started watching Dr. Stone. I know, I'm way behind on everything. There's so much good stuff out there. Dr. Stone, a little mini review here on the first 6 episodes. I'm enjoying the story. I like all the sciencey stuff. I like the characters. They do yell a lot. Even in the English, they yell a lot. But it's worth checking out if you can get past the fact that every time they get excited about anything, which is all the time, they start shouting. Anyway, moving on, let us go and dive into today's review with Mr. Keith. Today, I'm going to be reviewing Godzilla Singular Point with Mr. Keith, who is a repeat visitor on our podcast, and I'm so glad he's here because I seem to choose him for all of our long franchises. So he was here.
First Lupin, now
yeah,
Godzilla.
Now Godzilla.
The golden oldies.
Yes, but I always bring you on for the newest version thereof instead of the old stuff, which eventually I might have to inflict old stuff upon you. So Godzilla Singular Point is a brand new Godzilla series. It just came out in 2021 and it's on Netflix. And this is a 13-episode series that has a very interesting story that Netflix somehow summarizes in one sentence. Brought together by a mysterious song, a graduate student and an engineer are in a fight against an unimaginable force that may spell doom for the world. So, Mr. Keith, how well do you think that describes the series?
I think that's maybe the most basic outline you can give, but the fact that they don't mention orthogonal diagonalizer in the summary, they're leaving a lot. I am going to be tripping over a lot of words in this because orthogonal diagonalizer does not really roll off the tongue. I know.
Neither do half the monster names, I have to admit. No. But, this series... beautifully animated.
Yes.
Studio Bones worked on it. Mm-hmm. They're really well known for doing series like Mob Psycho 100, Soul Eater. They did work on My Hero Academia and Space Dandy.
Really? One of my favorites. Yeah.
One of your favorites. The 3D animation was done by a completely different studio. That was by a studio called Orange, which I thought they actually did a pretty good job. Most of the time, it was pretty good.
There were a couple of scenes I was kind of
there's one monster in particular I think they didn't do a very good job on.
Really?
So,
with the 3D?
Yeah.
But otherwise, it wasn't too distracting or anything.
It wasn't Attack of the Bad CGI bad.
Some of them, it's like...
some of them it was like, it's like, really? Ooh, ouch. But yeah, no, it was actually pretty good. The character design is by another really big name, Kazue Kato. He actually wrote the manga Blue Exorcist.
Oh, okay.
So again, really well known for...
very distinct characters. Yeah. A lot of variety.
Yeah, love the character design in this. The script was written by a guy named Toen Jo, who is a science fiction writer, and he has actually a doctorate in something, I'm not sure what it is. It's called Mathematical Physical Study on the Natural Languages. And I tried looking this up on the internet to find out what that is exactly, and my brain kind of broke, which kind of makes sense.
That fits with the show. I feel like maybe this was like his thesis paper put into anime form because it's so math heavy and theoretical physics.
It's not even math heavy. It's just like, because...
It's not actual math. It's just like theoretical concepts.
Kind of space and time. I don't know. It's weird. We will get more into that in the spoiler section. But... so overall, Mr. Keith, what was your opinions and thoughts of this show? Non-spoilery.
Non-spoilers. I liked it overall. I think it came together well in the finale. I think it could have been shorter, maybe like 10 episodes. You know, there was a bit there at the end where I was it dragged a little.
A little less text messaging.
A little less, yeah. Yeah, there was a whole lot of text messaging.
Which is very hard to follow when it's subtitled and also still when it's in English.
And it's very fast.
Yeah.
Like it's meant to be rapid fire because it's just these two ideas, brains kind of bouncing off each other.
Yeah, lots of emojis put in there too.
And even with the subtitles, I knew I was missing stuff. Overall, I liked it. I really liked the creature design, taking familiar kind of concepts like Godzilla and Mothra and Rodan and kind of putting a new spin on them. I like that. I love the whole Jet Jaguar saga. It goes from basically a punchline.
We will definitely talk a lot more about Jet Jaguar.
One of the main plot elements. Because at first you just think it's like a joke. It's like, here's this old guy with this weird mecha and he's watched too much Gundam. And by the end, it's way more important than you could ever have imagined. Overall, I liked it. I would have cut down on some of the tech jargon and maybe trimmed down a few episodes.
I will drop a hint. It was like a we liked it, or it was more of a way too much weird science and it was incomprehensible.
Yeah.
So
there were parts where I just like my kind of eyes glazed over and I just let it wash over me. I'm like, all right, I get the gist. I don't need to know the details.
Yeah. We're not trying to figure out time travel right now.
No.
So, but anyway, so what's your star rating for this one?
I would give it a solid 3. 3 out of 5. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have to admit, so the first time I watched this series, I did it in 2 days in Japanese because I like to torture myself, apparently. And I got done with it and I went, I'm not sure what I just watched.
What the heck just happened?
Yeah, I am not sure what just happened, but I think I like it. And then I rewatched it in English and I'm like, I'm still not 100% sure what happened, but I'm seeing the shadow now. So I can see myself watching this maybe a third time just because, just to get more and more hints. And I think a series that creates that much rewatchability for me deserves a 4-star.
It can't be bad, yeah.
So I'm going to give it a 4-star.
Okay, yeah, and I'm glad you had recommended to me to watch it in English.
Yeah.
Because I usually watch, when available, the subtitles.
I do too, but there are times when it's like you just need to concentrate on the show and not reading the show, if that makes sense.
This one had so many mathematical concepts that are hard enough to understand listening. Reading them would have been even more
I will say
difficult.
There's one part where I think the subtitles had a better word for something. They kept using hyperspace in English, and the subtitles were kept saying transtemporal instead.
Which I
makes
think a lot more sense.
Makes more sense with the plot.
Especially, where it ends up.
Yeah, so I'm not sure what kind of translation decisions were made between the English dub and the subtitles.
It's tricky, because you want to keep kind of the scientific aspect of it, but you want to make it maybe some phrases that Americans might understand
more.
A little better. So
although
it's
transtemporal hard. Just literally means through time.
Through time.
I mean, it's pretty basic right there. Hyperspace is probably a little bit more complicated.
Kind of weird,
So, but I guess American science shows use hyperspace a lot more
to mean
than
anything.
Any kind
of
interdimensional,
intertime. Yeah.
Okay, so you gave it a 3-star. I gave it a 4.
I think though, I think if I watched it again, knowing, because it almost like, I thought it was interesting. This isn't a spoiler, but the end of the show, they basically say this is the beginning.
Yes, and that's what's made it me go, ooh, I need to rewatch this because that ending was
because there are some movies and some shows that basically you need a second watch to really get everything. And
but I felt this one did the twist a lot better than some shows because I have to admit, when I watched it the first time, I was kind of like getting an idea of what was going to happen by the second to last episode.
Yeah.
But it was still like wow, that was a really cool way of wrapping it up and making it go.
Yeah, they don't like drop it on you all of a sudden. There's hints basically throughout the entire show.
And I like that. I like the fact that even though this is an incomprehensible, weird science show with giant monsters, we're going to actually make you be able to almost figure it out on your own.
Yeah, by the time when they were, do some reveals in the finale, which we'll get to, it wasn't like, oh, my mind is blown. It was like, all right, it just made everything kind of come together and feel more cohesive, some of the plot elements throughout.
Well, let's go ahead and get into spoilers here.
Spoiler territory.
Because it's time to dive into this a little bit.
All right.
I'm not 100% sure where I want to start, but let's go ahead and go for the fun part first.
Okay.
Giant monsters.
Giant monsters.
Giant monsters. Yes.
So
Godzilla. He has been around since 1954.
Yes. And for most of the show, he's like not really there. He's there as a skeleton.
Yeah, and he evolves multiple times, which is really cool because he starts out more as like a fish creature swimming, comes up on land, he like cocoons himself, blows himself up
for several episodes. He's frozen there. And then at the end,
and in one of the like multiple like little newsy science conference asides, they mentioned that it seems like he's turned into goop inside there, so they're definitely going for the chrysalis.
Really,
like
kind of evolving.
He's evolving himself into his next stage.
Okay,
which is when he gets the atomic fire breath.
Yeah, and then he just gets crazy powerful.
Oh, and then he just destroys all of Tokyo.
But I did like, they brought in like I mentioned earlier, Rodan, who's from the movies.
The Rodan.
Mothra's from the movies.
Yeah, I love the fact that Mothra isn't truly a monster. It's just like this weird evolved silk moth that flies around and looks really pretty.
Yeah, it wasn't
It was just like this nice little poetic moment in the middle of it.
Was the shell monster from the movies, the one with the spines, who they end up using the spear?
He is Anguirus. He's actually from the second Godzilla movie.
Really?
1955, Godzilla Raids Again. I looked this up. I actually recently watched that movie too. Let me tell you, he's way cooler in this anime than he is in that movie.
I bet.
In that movie, he looks a little bit like a cross between an Ankylosaurus and a hedgehog. So,
all right, they kept the spirit of that alive.
They kept the spirit of it, but made him way cooler. And there's no time travel, weird bullet deflection abilities.
He can, see what's going to happen or anything. Okay.
Yeah, no, I love the fact that apparently he can like see just enough into the future. He can like know the bullets are coming and deflect them to shoot back at the people.
A few seconds, but not enough where they had to just get up close.
And that's where more of the weird science comes
point
in.
Blank.
There was actually only one monster I think that was original to this series that they did, and that was Salunga, he's the one in India that looks kind of monkey-ish, sort of.
That was the only.
That's the only original to this series. The rest of them are all remakes of monsters from other things. Even the spider things were from a 1967.
Oh, that's right, the spiders. Film.
Yeah, those were. I was getting Monster Hunter flashbacks a little bit from those spiders, to tell you the truth, because the way they attack and stuff was very Monster Hunter.
They're swarming and of course, I mean, we'll get to this, but in the post credits. Stinger, there's another classic Godzilla villain.
Which was actually in the most recent American Godzilla movie.
Godzilla versus Kong, right?
Yeah. If you guys have seen that, there's a hint of what comes at the end there.
Yeah.
And I went ahead and I listed Jet Jaguar under the monster category because he actually is from a Godzilla film from the 1973. Yeah, apparently Jet Jaguar shows up there in Godzilla versus Megalon, which I have instantly rocketed that to I must watch it.
We gotta watch it. Yeah,
he looks way more dorky in that movie than he does in this show.
He starts off pretty dorky in this one though, but he gets as they go.
I like the fact they gave him a very retro look.
Yeah,
and it's almost in some ways more realistic the way they do his arms and stuff than like the more mecha type.
It looks like something someone would actually
build in their garage,
but not some giant transformer or something. Voltron
until the very end.
Then things go full anime.
Well, it's because they figured out the whole invincible program which somehow magically makes him grow.
They don't explain that. They're like, here's a program that'll make him invincible. Well, how it does it, who cares?
He's a descendant of the original Jet Jaguar and an AI that looks like a dog. So
and one of the AIs was called PP apparently.
Well, Pelops too.
There was Pelops too, and then the last one, the baby one, was called PP.
That's right. And so he became Jet Jaguar PP.
And that was kind of his ultimate.
Have we made it clear this anime is weird?
It's, You've got AIs from the future sending messages back to their past
and about 3 or 4 different conspiracy theories happening.
Within one show.
I'm still not sure who all's a good guy or a bad guy.
Yeah, that's the thing.
I'm still not sure. Is Ashihara the main guy who started all this? Is he evil? Is he good? Is he what? And Tilda from the Shiva Institute, she's set up as a villain, but in the end, I'm not sure if she was actually a villain or just very protective of her corner.
So Ashihara was interesting because he's not in the show really at all.
But he's the hinge point of it.
Yeah, you hear all this talk about his research. He essentially sets the stage for
everything.
And then when he shows up at the end, he's got this evil smile. And I'm like, wait, I thought he was a good guy. He kind of helped prevent the
and I thought he wasn't necessarily a bad guy or or evil. He was just a scientist who's trying to find things out but didn't want to destroy the world in the process. And now I'm like, maybe he does want to destroy the world, but he wants to do it in his own way.
In his own little Mecha Godzilla
way. Yeah. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, it was.
Plus, he's got the crazy hair, crazy eyes. I mean, he's instantly like
classic
mad scientist. Kind of.
But yeah, I did like that there was no real clear like villain.
Yeah.
You know, it's kind of all these people trying to figure out in their own way.
I'm still trying to decide if that fake journalist was a villain or not.
He kind of shows up at the end.
Because he shows up at the end as kind of like...
looking pretty evil, yeah.
Yeah, and so does the American
guy,
originally helped out BB, the crazy scientist in India. So... I'm still not sure. Are they good guys or are they bad guys?
I think they're planning. I mean, they have to be planning a season 2.
Now, the one person I thought did have a deep, dark plan that turned out not to have a deep, dark plan was the guy who was in charge of the radio installation where Godzilla's skeleton was in the basement. I'm like, no, I think he just literally, that's his job. And he just likes teasing the new people by showing them this giant Godzilla skeleton.
And he's like, no, like, we didn't do it.
I got nothing to do with this. Yeah,
they do set him up like you think he's going to be, you know, part of a grander conspiracy.
But I think he just literally likes teasing the new guy. And
we got a skeleton.
Here, you want to see what's in the basement?
Check it out.
Check it out.
That and the microfiche. Right?
I wonder if it's worth any... Oh, yeah, the microfiche.
That part was funny.
So if you are younger than us and have never seen a microfiche machine, you will totally relate to a little 10-second thing where he has to try and find this old technology.
How do I read this? What is microfiche? Yeah,
what does the reader look like?
Classic library reading software.
Yes.
Or I guess hardware it would be.
Well, we used to have a microfiche reader in our library.
Back in the day?
Not that long ago. It died about 8 years ago. It used to belong it was at the main library.
All right.
So, and it didn't die until about 8 years ago, and they opted not to replace it.
I guess that makes sense. It's sad, though. I mean,
it's sad because
it's a staple of, you know, old school libraries and
and research and stuff.
Facilities.
Because there's still a lot of records that are on microfiche, like old newspapers, genealogy records. It hasn't all been digitized yet. And in some ways, microfiche can last up to like 100 years or so. So it's considered a pretty stable way of storing things.
Yeah, record keeping.
But anyway, we're getting off topic again.
Library talk.
Library talk. Antique old library equipment that we still had for quite some time.
I know.
I think we finally got rid of our last overhead projector just a little bit ago.
Really? That too? Oh my gosh.
Those are still used in a lot of my college courses, believe it or not.
I remember those, yeah.
Well, they're handy. You just drop the little thing on there, you start drawing, and it shows what you have.
Just
very low tech, worked really well.
It worked. All right, we're going off on a tangent.
Anyway, Jet Jaguar.
Yes, so we're in spoiler territory now.
Well, we're in high spoilers because Jet Jaguar is like surprisingly the main character in many ways.
So you start the show and you just think it's this old guy's silly robot.
Oh, Mr. Otaki.
In his garage.
He's insane.
It's like he thinks it can fight Godzilla, you know, kaiju. And
the whole thing is he's all about fighting off monsters, and no monsters have actually showed up yet.
He's just prepared.
Just like he's just prepared. He's making this robot to fight monsters.
But then as the show goes on, you know, they give it the spear with the horn from the one
and then they load an AI into it.
And then they put an AI into it, which is when
it gains like sentience in a way.
Yeah, and then the final twist, I guess, that really brings it all together is that the song was sent from a future Jaguar.
Yeah, we forgot to mention the song.
Oh, the song.
Yeah. This whole thing opens because they're hearing this weird song coming from a mansion. So the Yun Arakawa and what's his name? His friend Habaru.
Yes.
Are called in from the Otaki people to go ghost hunting to find this weird song that's coming from this mansion, and that song keeps playing throughout the entire series.
Yes, and for a song to be played that often, it has to be pretty catchy. And I gotta say, I like the song.
Yeah.
Even in episode 13 when it came on, I still liked it. You know?
And they do a choral version of it during like the epic moments, and it's finale. Like, oh my gosh, this simple little like Indian song suddenly became so cool. And I'm planning on trying to buy a copy of that song if I can, because it was good.
It was catchy. So like they kind of set up this song as the cause for the problems, because you hear the song.
Yeah.
People are investigating, and then kaiju begin showing up.
And as soon as they investigate the song, the Rodan show up.
Yeah.
And then the Mandas, I think, were next.
Yes, they came next, and then
you had this, and then Godzilla came out of the water.
Underwater Godzilla. Yeah.
Everything's coming out of the water.
Yes. Yeah. So you think this song is like summoning these creatures, but I guess the twist in the finale was the song was actually sent back for us to use to stop the creatures. That's why it showed up.
Because the song actually contains all the information that Jet Jaguar needs to do his evolution into Jet Jaguar PP, the Invincible, and
to upgrade and
punch out Godzilla.
The Diagonizer to stop the red dust. Yeah. So it was definitely like it was a mind bender of a twist because you're thinking.
But the thing is, they drop a hint about this halfway through the series when Professor Lee and what's her name, May Camino were talking about the weird like time travel information and stuff. They actually drop a hint that you can send information from the future, but the way you don't break time is because nobody knows it actually is information.
You code it in a way. And that's what they did. Yeah, it was a song.
Yeah. And I'm still trying to figure out, I don't know how much May Camino actually like saved the world with all her crazy ideas, or if it was her AI Pelops who was helping her out the entire
AI
way.
did the heavy lifting for sure.
Random internet download program.
Yeah, it started just as this little assistant on the internet. I'm like, okay,
I'll download this, and then it takes over her computer. It becomes its own little robot thing.
It just keeps evolving.
Yeah.
But yeah, I like that, and it does bring it kind of full circle where the end. Theoretically, the future has to send it back. Yeah, that's where it all began.
And that's it. You hear these voices talking to each other over the beginning of the series. And there's just random talking. And you're like, I have no idea what they're talking about. And then at the very end, they start talking again. And you realize that it's all the different versions of Jet Jaguar talking to itself about the fact how it knew everything from the beginning and so on and so forth. And they've lived, they've died, they've done this, they've done that.
Yeah.
And then the last line is like, and the story begins again.
And it begins. Yeah, and Jet Jaguar mentions that at the end, like how it's been in every timeline. Yeah. So it knows all these outcomes. Yeah. So, and that's why it's such an advanced AI.
And I was just
way more advanced than they anticipated.
They did.
Yeah.
But I'm just like that. I don't know. That moment just kind of went, ooh, I need to rewatch the series.
Yeah, exactly. Restart. I think
restart.
And I think watching from episode 1, knowing, okay, the song is here for this reason. This character is doing this, it would help a lot, I think. Yeah.
There is this weird material called archetype that kind of like goes through this entire series.
Yeah, it's the red dust is made of it.
The red dust they called phase 1.
Yeah.
They have weird see-through cubes, which they call phase 3. Supposedly it goes up to 13 phases.
Which is the Diagonizer, which is what they use at the
Diagonizer,
end, basically, to win. Yeah.
Converts the red dust into giant crystalline spears.
Yeah.
Which, considering how many people are probably in red dust areas,
dangerous.
I'm like, I wonder how many people died by getting rid of the red dust and saving the world. But they don't really show that aspect.
No, they just show the kaiju. So my understanding was that the archetype, it's material that basically exists in 2 different dimensions, in our dimension and some other dimension.
Or it exists outside time.
Or both. It could be,
both.
it could connect
because
to different
somehow
timelines.
They managed to catch light with archetype that keeps bouncing off these different cubes, but it keeps gaining an energy, like it's drawing energy from somewhere else.
Which is not supposed to be possible.
It's not supposed to be possible. So the idea is that it's pulling energy from the future. So it exists in the present and the future and possibly the past.
3 different times.
3 different times all at once. And they say there's 13 phases, but at one point I think May Camino makes drops some kind of line like it doesn't actually have 13 phases.
Yeah, we're
seeing different. We're seeing it differently in our dimension than
a different
angle of it in our dimension.
Okay, yeah, it's very interesting but very confusing.
Yeah, and I'm still trying to figure out, because when the red dust shows up is when all the monsters show up, and they can only live in the red dust because Rodan outside the red dust eventually drop dead. So are the monsters made out of the archetype red dust? Or do they create the archetype red dust?
I think Godzilla created the red dust. That was one of his things. He would spread the red dust.
That makes sense. Okay, flashlight just went on.
Yes.
Or light bulb. So Godzilla is the singular point, which creates the red dust, which is why they have to get rid of Godzilla because
Godzilla
he brings the catastrophe, which ends the world and recreates it.
Because stopping the other kaiju helped, but
it didn't stop it.
And
got you.
What's the scientist's name?
Ashihara.
Ashihara. He knew he had to stop Godzilla, but he did not have the technology yet. Because remember, he started like 50 years ago.
Right, and he had his old task program running, which I love the way they symbolize the supercomputer like traveling in it, because the little dog AI puts on a snorkel and dives in
this
swims
weird
along.
little, and you see him actually in there.
Yeah,
at
well,
one point.
I think what happens is Pelops 2, actually, while running the task, he turns it around and says, okay, we're going to run it backwards through the past. I think he actually time traveled to the past and goes to Ashihara as he's just... I don't know if he talks to Ashihara, but I think he then embeds what he needs into Ashihara's program.
So that he knows. Back in the 50 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's essentially it's the past, present, and future all working together
in this one...
to stop this catastrophe. You have a scientist getting information from the future. The future sending that information back
through the past.
To the past.
With a song, which the scientist is also studying, because the scientist is like, what's this weird song that keeps showing up?
Yeah. So it's almost like, this idea of time being flat. Everything's kind of happening all at once. Yeah.
And time is also kind of a closed loop, because in some way doesn't this fall into the predestination fate thing?
Yeah, and that's why it ends with the beginning kind of.
Your fate is set no matter what. Which...
That's
a whole philosophy discussion we are not getting into.
I would never have expected a Godzilla anime to have us thinking about predestination, closed time loops. Yeah, fate.
How does time operate? I mean...
It had some big ideas.
It did have some big ideas, which I kind of enjoyed, because it's been a while since I've watched an anime that tried to portray those big ideas, but actually kept it interesting. Because, as I said, you were right. It does get a little boring at moments, but every time I started kind of going, okay, I'm losing interest in this, they'd flash back to Godzilla stomping on something.
Yeah, they're like, all right, you need some kaiju.
We need some monsters destroying things. Here we go.
Talking about it makes me understand it more, and I appreciate it.
Yeah.
I appreciate it more.
As I said, I think it was less science at the end than it was philosophy and poetry.
Yeah, the end was very poetic, for sure.
Yeah. And very much everything is cyclical. It goes back in circles and everything.
Kind of harmony,
With them building the little stinger at the end, with them building Mechagodzilla, I now really wonder how they're going to pull that into season 2, since they've already kind of established this...
Yeah, this timeline. And I'm assuming that was... So, the stinger is Ashihara overseeing construction of a Mechagodzilla.
With the fake journalist and the American guy who you thought was originally helping everybody stop the catastrophe. So now you're wondering what his end goal is.
So I'm assuming that, because we never see Godzilla's body. We see the big beam from Jet Jaguar.
I assumed Jet Jaguar by literally anatomized
it's just
himself
vanished.
And Godzilla, just completely destroyed them. That was the way I took that ending. But they stole the original Godzilla that apparently showed up when Ashihara was younger.
Okay.
Because remember, this whole thing starts with a festival celebrating the death of a monster.
Yes. Yeah.
And it destroyed an entire village where the mansion is now built that Ashihara used to live in. So I think what it is that Skeleton was 80 years old, which Ashihara, when he was a kid, it somehow got killed. So that was the first singular point that showed up. So that skeleton is still a Godzilla.
And so now they're grafting
the mechanicals onto that skeleton. I was wondering
if it was completely mechanical or put on a body.
I think they're grafting it onto the Godzilla.
Okay.
The skeleton.
The first Godzilla, though.
The first Godzilla. Which means the singular point isn't completely gone, because that skeleton still exists.
Yeah.
And somehow, because originally that song was being played through Godzilla's skeleton.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my gosh.
Season 2.
Okay. Season 2.
Bring it on. I'm ready.
With all of this weird discussion, I think we can figure out why some people really hated this anime.
Yeah, I would not recommend this to everyone. There's a lot of conceptual...
I recommended it to you because you said you liked weird time travel stuff.
I love time travel anime. I love, stuff that just bends my brain and breaks my mind.
I don't always like it, but I also really like giant monsters, and I felt they meshed the two well.
And like we said, the way it ended up, it was not. It didn't end on some big scientific theory. It was like more poetic.
It wound up being more poetic, more philosophy,
more about like
and more about Jet Jaguar punching out Godzilla.
Jet Jaguar growing huge and
detonating on Jet.
How a computer program can make him huge, they don't explain. They don't need to.
It was the weird Jet Jaguar invincible program, and it worked.
Yep. Via the future.
So fun Easter eggs. I don't know. Did you watch the opening song? Was amazing, and I watched the opening a lot because I really liked the song, the art style, and all the stuff they did in there.
I watched the opening, the first episode. Yeah, I think.
Did you ever watch the ending episode?
The closing credits.
Closing credits song.
For the last episode, I did because I knew there was a stinger
at the end. Yeah. So I watched it because I thought it was fascinating that they kind of went to an older style of animation, like it looks older, and then they brought in like the original designs of the monsters.
Oh, really?
Yeah, as you watch it through, you'll notice there's also apparently a whole bunch of Easter eggs in there I didn't catch because I'm not that up on my kaiju, of a bunch of monsters that didn't actually show up in the series.
Oh, but like classic
Godzilla, but like classic Godzilla monsters and stuff. But yeah, as you're watching it, it's like, oh, that's an older version of Godzilla. Because I think the version of Godzilla, I have to rewatch it because it's been years since I've seen it. The version of Godzilla I think they used in this series was the Shin Godzilla from the last live-action Japanese movie.
Yeah, it didn't look like the classic.
No, it
Godzilla.
wasn't the classic.
He was like a little more muscular.
Yeah, and his mouth was hinged differently.
His neck was kind of thick.
Yeah, and the tail was super long.
Yeah,
and
it was
wavy.
A different take.
And that I think is from the Shin Godzilla movie.
Okay. That would make sense.
So if he looks a little funky weird, I think it's because that's where they pulled it from. I haven't watched that movie in like 2-3 years.
That's the most recent Japanese one, though, right? Because we had our...
And that one was interesting because it's almost more of a statement on Japanese politics than
it
was
very
Godzilla.
Political, yeah. Godzilla.
Which made it very interesting to watch. And kind of harkens back to the roots of Godzilla, because the first Godzilla film from 1954, which is absolutely amazing. If you haven't seen it, highly recommend.
It's a classic, yeah.
Don't watch the weird American edited cut version. Watch the original Japanese. You have like so many tropes that show up later in anime. You have the main scientist, like emo dude, with an eye patch. Like he's got a black eye patch.
Of course,
it's like amazing. But the whole statement of that movie was all about nuclear warfare, weapons of mass destruction, and how humanity shouldn't have them, pretty much.
Yeah.
And it was just amazing, like heartfelt message about that. And then 10 years later, Godzilla becomes campy. Let's destroy everything.
Yeah, at that point, he's fighting just the monster of the week.
So basically. I felt like Shin Godzilla was trying to bring back like Godzilla as a message.
Because the roots are political, like you said. You know,
not so much political as about science and its uses.
Yeah, humanity kind of.
Yeah, science and humanity and how science can go too far.
Yeah.
But yeah, so as I said, because the Godzilla featured in this one is, I think, from that Shin Godzilla
and this
film.
one was like that. It had a similar... the monsters weren't really the focus. You know, it was kind of about the people and...
all they're trying to use the science that brings the monster
fights were fun, but they weren't really the main focus of the show. Oh,
another fun Easter egg I noticed. The American... they do a lot with news broadcasts throughout to kind of tell you what's going on, which is an old... I've seen that in a lot of anime. It's classic. I'm not sure about some of the other names of news broadcasts in there, but I noticed that when they were in America and they're doing like the reporting on the Rodan in Manhattan, the network was named Bones, which is the studio that animated the series.
Oh, really? Okay.
So that was one little Easter egg I caught in there. So I thought I was like, aha, Bones. I see you. I caught you on that one.
a little shout out.
A little shout out to their animation company. As I said, I'm not sure if the others were shout outs also because I'm not very familiar.
I'm sure
with
they
things.
were all kind of references. It seems like that kind of show where there's a million references kind of sprinkled throughout.
Yeah.
But yeah, just one real quick note on the animation. I liked how the kaiju were animated so differently.
They were done by the CG company. Yeah. Everything else was done more 2D.
Yeah, and I liked it because they are supposed to be from different dimensions.
Right.
They're not supposed to look like something
and most times
from our dimension.
They didn't clash with the 2D.
No.
It like somehow worked really well.
They look different, but they...
That one moment when the Rodan looks through the doorway at them when they're trapped back in like the convenience store or something, just looking at the Rodan's eye, I was like, okay, that's actually kind of creepy.
Yeah,
it gave you like some of the creepy vibes you should get from these monsters.
Yeah, the monsters, they were like fleshier than some of the movie versions, which was creepy.
And the only monster I thought was bad, sort of badly CGI'd, or at least didn't seem to flow with the other animation as well, was Salunga, the one that was attacking the Shiva Center in India. There were moments where I was like, you are very CGI. Very CGI. And it just didn't quite fit with the rest of the anime.
Yeah, there was a shot at the end where he's like descending down that cavern holding onto a wire, and it looked, it clashed with
it clashed a little too much with the 2D.
Yeah.
But the rest of it, I felt they did a very good job incorporating the 3D CGI type models to the 2D.
Yeah, and it fit. It didn't overpower the 2D.
Yeah, it didn't like snap you out of the series and go, what did they do?
Because like we said,
there's a few things I've watched where it's like, ooh, I just got attacked by really bad CGI.
Yeah, some of the CGI just takes you out of it. But no, I thought I liked how they animated the kaiju. Yeah, overall.
No, I think the animators did a really good job on this, and that's part of what kept me watching was the really good monster.
Yeah, the monster designs and seeing, especially Godzilla, seeing how it evolved. 3 or 4 times.
And the people designs. I mean, Mei Kamino, the way they designed her.
They have so much character.
She is such the grad student that never gets enough sleep and just doesn't care about anything because she's got like, she's wearing a t-shirt and shorts. No social life. Her glasses are always falling off her face, and she communicates better with her AI than she does people half the time.
Her AI was her best friend.
Yeah.
That says it all.
And didn't you wish you had an AI like that in college?
Yes.
Take all your notes and collate them into a paper for you and publish it. And it's just like, oh, by the way, I published your paper. You did what?
What? Yeah. You just say something and it spits out every amount of research you could want.
It's like, oh, I'm looking for information on this. Oh, look, here, I found this and this and this and this and this. Yeah. No, I think
we all could have used that.
We would have all been the laziest students on earth if we had that AI.
We had that.
But... yeah, the one case where downloading random code from the internet did not turn out bad.
It saved the world, yeah. I know. Normally it says, do not open this attachment.
Do not do this. Like, hey, this sounds cool. Click. I wonder what I just downloaded.
An AI from the future.
All right. The other thing I find hysterically funny. Mei Kamino and Yun Arakawa are two main people. So Yun Arakawa is the engineer who builds the AI. Mei Kamino is like the brains behind everything. And she knows Habaru from as kids. They went to the same high school, who's a friend and coworker of Yun Arakawa.
But
they never meet.
They never meet. I love
that. Those two never meet until like the last minute of the series.
It is like running in parallel, basically, the entire show.
Because they text back and forth with each other.
Yeah, they communicate, but don't actually.
She uses a screen name that means like long-horned beetle or something like that. I can't remember what the Japanese word is that they use. Because that's her symbol on her text messaging. Yeah. And so it's not even until like almost the end of the series you realize, I talked with her possibly on the phone. And Habaru goes, wait a minute, you mean that's Mei Kamino? And it's like, wait a minute. Yeah. We actually, I thought that was hysterically funny.
Because you've got these two kind of plot lines running in parallel.
Yeah.
Occasionally kind of crossing over, but not really. It's just kind of mostly running separately. And then until
at the very end, it's like,
then it all kind of comes together.
We know who this person is that I've been randomly texting with for the whole show.
I really like that.
So that was again a really nice touch on the character building there.
Yeah.
And the fact that he offered her, this dare or bet thing about solving this puzzle, and it was like sushi and a Tokyo helicopter ride, and I was just like, this sounds like college students.
Sushi in a helicopter.
Sushi in a helicopter ride. I mean, come on.
But and I just wish, like we said, the text messaging was a little easier to follow.
Yeah,
it was super quick, which it was meant to be because they're supposed to be two like super smart people.
Well, and also I think a lot of it was the fact that Japanese phones are more built for texting.
Really?
So I think a lot of it was probably they could type faster than we can.
Probably.
Another favorite character, Goro Otaki.
Of course,
the old crazy guy.
Right.
You always need an old crazy guy.
Yep. Who unknowingly helped save the world. Yeah, by building Jaguar.
I actually like him better in the Japanese. subtitles, because you can tell because they actually put quotes around a lot of this, and also just the way he talks goes very different. He does a lot of quoting of things.
Okay, like idioms.
Like idioms and poems
poetry
and stuff like that. And there's one point where he does like almost a whole kabuki like stance and quote thing.
Really?
And it comes out way better in the Japanese than it does in English, because he does like the whole voice thing and everything. And also there's that part where they're driving the truck off the ramp.
Oh, the ramp.
And in the English he says something like, hold on to your butts, or something like that. In the Japanese, I love it. It's really simple. All he says is, what a view. And I'm like, this so sums up his craziness right so there. It's like he is launching this truck into who knows where. They don't know if they're going to survive.
His first thought
is, what a view.
Yeah, I normally watch, even when I'm watching in English, I have the subtitles on, but I turn them off because they are so different. Big differences.
There's a lot of differences.
Almost completely different. Yeah.
And I have to admit the science was a little bit easier to follow in the Japanese in the English than it was the Japanese.
Yeah.
But the Japanese, I think, gave me a better hinge on like Otaki's character and some of the wording, because like the hyperspace versus transtemporal. So some of it I was like, okay. I think watching it in both the Japanese and the English helped me get a better handle on the series.
It must have been a hard show to localize.
It must have been.
It's pretty easy to, well, not easy, but it's pretty straightforward to translate, like certain anime concepts, but when you're talking about science and you have a guy quoting poetry, that can and you want American audiences to kind of at least wrap their heads around it.
Yeah,
it's tough.
All right. Well, I think it's time for us to wrap it up there.
Alrighty.
We're reaching the end, well, actually a little past our time limit, but
of course.
Try to keep these under a half an hour. Doesn't always happen. But thank you so much, Mr. Keith, for coming to join me on this.
Happy to be here.
And exploring the newest version of Godzilla with some weird mind-warping
Bring on season two. Bring on season two. I'm ready.
I'm actually looking forward to season two. I really want to know where they go with this.
Yeah.
So,
a lot of possibilities.
A lot of possibilities. Well, and hopefully I'll have you on again, maybe for something that's not a franchise that's been around for over 50 years.
50-year-old classic Japanese franchise. Hey, I'm up for anything.
Hey.
Yep.
Yeah, well, I know you're up for anything. That's why I threw this series at you.
I know. I would not recommend this to most people.
No, this is definitely a very specific audience. So. Yeah. Anyway, well, thank you very much, and I will hopefully have you on again another time.
Awesome.
So, bye.
Bye.
I hope all of you enjoyed that review with all of its confusing back and forth and way too many characters that we weren't able to go into in detail. But as a summary, Mr. Keith gave Godzilla Singular Point a 3 and I gave it a 4. And we actually had a really great time talking about it. After our recording, he said he felt he understood the series a lot more after our discussion. And I love an anime that gives a lot of room for discussion, which this one did. Another mini review, I recently picked up Pokemon Snap. I know I'm running a bit late on that one, and I've been playing it, and I give that one a really good rating. At first I was a little bit bored because I was like, oh, all you do is you ride on the set track and take pictures of Pokemon, and then I found out there are quests and like different things you're trying to do, and the design of the Pokemon and the landscapes and the way they interact together is amazing in that game. So highly recommend Pokemon Snap for the Switch. And, speaking of Pokemon, that's another long-running franchise. Would it be too much torture to have Mr. Keith on for a Pokemon movie one day? I will have to consider just how evil I want to be. And with that, have a lot of fun watching a lot of anime. Goodbye!